Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Stateroom East and our Rotary Club celebration of service. I'm Ron Barnes, and I'm honored to be president for this last week for your meeting. And what you're going to enjoy next week is you're going to have a takeover of a very capable lady who's going to take over your presidency. So we'll have some fun with that. The thought for the day: in a moment of decision, the best thing you can do is do the right thing. The next best thing is to do the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is do nothing. Theodore Roosevelt. And we have a serial reflector today. Dave Meyer is back. Give us a reflection. Dave?
I promise this will be the last you hear from me for a little bit in reflections. So there's a question posed here. And the commonality is both Caitlyn Jenner, formerly Kris Jenner, and Elliot Page, formerly Ellen Page, identify as transsexual. I'd like to spend a few minutes on reflecting on folks like them, which is timely considering the recent City Council resolution supporting gender-affirming care here in Bloomington. Transsexual is really an outdated term for individuals that are now better described as gender nonconforming. People that are gender nonconforming do not see themselves as fitting into the sex of the bodies they were born with. Okay. Oh. All right. I'll get it. The World Health Organization recognizes a clear distinction between gender and sex. They summarize that sex refers to the different biological and physiological characteristics of males and females, such as reproductive organs, chromosomes, and hormones. Gender refers to the socially constructed characteristics of women and men, such as norms, roles, and relationships of and between groups of women and men. It varies from society to society and can be changed. Some gender nonconforming individuals experience gender dysphoria, a deep sense of unease and distress that may occur when your biological sex does not match your gender identity. This is a psychiatric condition, but not an illness per se. People with gender dysphoria often have psychiatric illness such as depression, anxiety, extreme risk-taking behavior, and can experience suicidal thoughts and behaviors. When gender dysphoria is experienced in adolescence, there is reason for concern. Nonetheless, the American Psychological Association states that if children express gender nonconformance, it is not helpful to force the child to act in a more gender conforming way. Gender non-conforming people are estimated to account for 1.6% of the general population, and that makes them one of the smallest and most visible minorities in the U.S. This also helps make them a target of discrimination. In the U.S. today, societal acceptance of gender nonconformity is open to debate. A recent poll by YouGov reports that nearly 6 in 10 Americans believe that transgender individuals should be protected by hate crime laws, while 1 in 3 Americans believe that it is morally wrong to identify with a gender different from one's sex assigned at birth. In addition, tolerance may be declining, as the FBI observed a 33% jump last year in reported hate crimes based on gender identity from the previous year. There's one particularly painful lesson from the 20th century on societal treatment of gender nonconformity. Berlin, Germany, was a hotbed of research into transgender medicine in the early 20th century. The world's first Institute of Sexual Science was established there in 1919 and prospered until the early 1930s. But in May 1933, the Berlin Institute of Sexual Science was ransacked, shut down, and its library confiscated by the Nazis. A few days later, their books were burned in the nearby Bebelplatz Square. Unknown numbers. In October 1936, the Reich Central Office for Combating Homosexuality and Abortion was created by a decree of Heinrich Himmler. This decree established a framework for prosecuting homosexuals and gender nonconforming people who were known as transvestites to the German authorities of that time. Unknown numbers of trans Germans died in concentration camps, while many others were forcefully detransitioned. I know this is a lot to absorb. Nonetheless, I'd like to reflect on what history will be written about America in the 21st century on our treatment of transsexuals. Will we follow the Rotary 4-way test and the golden rule, or will we risk repeating history by scorning gender nonconformists? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Now to introduce our guest, Steve Wicks.
We have just 2 guests here in person. When I call your name, if you could stand, if you can physically get up and stand, or just raise your hand. Guests of Michael Shermis, we have Jonas Chang. And guest of Wendell St. John, we have Robert Wolford. Joy, do we have any guests online?
Yes, Steve, we have one guest online, and I'm happy to introduce Catherine Swanson, who is Rotarian Tina Swanson's older sister. And she and I have had a nice chat and gotten to know each other. So welcome to Catherine.
Certainly welcome to Rotary. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask any of us.
Thank you, Steve. We have some birthdays to celebrate. Ellen Boyd's birthday's today. Aaron Brewington on the 29th. And yesterday, John Hobson. So happy birthday, folks. And we have some Rotary anniversaries to celebrate. Hannah Hirsch, 1 year. And Ashley Wesley, 9 years. Just a few announcements, if you'll bear with me. Tonight, again, is the past president's dinner at Sarah Laughlin's at 5:30. Past presidents, it's an opportunity to help Tracy understand the role of the presidency. I think she has a pretty good grasp on it, but by the end of the evening, she will be definitely prepped. We also still need your help on July 9th, 13th for the supply drive for the Teachers Warehouse. Ann Bright is gathering volunteers to work 2-hour shifts at Kroger's, at Office Max, and at Staples. And those 2-hour shifts still need spots. So in the roundabout this week will be another link for you to link up and help us out on July 13th. Now for our program, Michael Shermas, our esteemed program co-chair, will introduce our program today. Michael.
Thank you, President Ron, for one more hour here. So one of our own today, John Zody, is a member of the Bloomington Rotary Club and CDFI Friendly Bloomington's executive director. He has 25 years of experience in public service in Indiana. This includes the most recent role as Director of Housing and Neighborhood Development for the City of Bloomington from 2021 to 2023, where I had the good fortune to work with him there. John has also held roles at the state and federal level, where his duties included program management, fundraising, advocacy, communications, and congressional administration. For his service in state government, John was twice awarded the Sagamore of the Wabash from Indiana governors. He's also served in higher education and is currently an adjunct instructor in ethics and leadership at Indiana University's O'Neill School. He's a Martinsville native and lives in Bloomington with his wife and 2 children. John.
Thanks, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. To get fired up here, I want to recognize a few folks that are with us. So going to get the clicker's where it needs to be. Yep, there we go. Okay, going to go back for just a minute. Thank you for allowing me to speak to my home club. So I've spoken to the other 2 Rotary clubs in Bloomington this spring. So they've been kind of my testing ground for my presentation. So I appreciate our fellow Rotarians giving me feedback. Jim Bright has been at one of those. So we'll see how we do today. And my goal is to leave with you information about what our organization does and how we might help those in our 13 county region. So I'll make a little ask of you at the end here. I am an employee of the Community Foundation of Bloomington and Monroe County, formally, so I can explain that as you have questions, but a couple of my colleagues are here. Megan Neese and Emily Hannon from the foundation are here. We also have one of our board members, Jonas Chang, who was introduced as a guest from the city of Bloomington, is on our board, and Phil Amerson is a member of the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association, which has helped support our organization with funding. And so what is this organization? What do we do? Who do we help? And why am I here? So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Over the last 25 years, as Michael said, I've been to just about every nook and cranny of this state. And my first job out of college was in community development for the state of Indiana. And so you go out, you have people who are asking you for funding. In my role, it was through grants. So I went to almost every county, I think, in the first year. And you talk to people who are trying to get something done in their community, right? Housing, a daycare center, or a new YMCA, a facade on a downtown historic building, and you try to help folks out. And people are always trying to figure out, how do we get this stuff done? And there's a lot of need. We have 92 counties, 6.8 million people in Indiana. There's a lot of need. And as winds change and go back and forth over 25 years, you continue to see a lot of that need. But it still exists in different ways, and it sort of evolves. And so I'm going to talk to you today about one tool in that community development toolbox, which is CDFI Friendly Bloomington. And we'll talk through, my presentation is relatively short. I can talk, but hopefully there are a lot of questions and we can talk through so you leave with a good understanding of what we do. So CDFI Friendly Bloomington. What is it? Over the last 5 months since I've been in this job, I've asked a number of people, or they'll ask me, what are you doing now? And if you ask my 9-year-old daughter, he asked people for money to give other people money to get houses. Not completely unheard of with that description, my 9-year-old. Financial matchmaking is what someone said. Where traditional financing stops, CDFI lending can take over. I'll explain what that means. We help connect dots with lenders and others to make a project happen. So that's kind of what we're talking about here, where our organization exists as sort of a networker to help community development projects advance. So I'm going to kind of break down the name, and that way we know kind of what it is. But CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution. And these are mission-based community development lenders that are 100% dedicated to helping deliver affordable, flexible financing to low-income populations or to underserved or underbanked communities, places where investment traditionally, either traditional financing or alternative financing, really just hasn't been present. And that's in a lot of places across the country. They're mostly nonprofits. Okay, some are for-profit. We have different financial institutions that can achieve CDFI status, but most of the time are nonprofits. But any organization that chooses to be a community development financial institution has to be certified by the U.S. Treasury. So that's sort of the threshold. If you're wondering what makes you one or not, you go through a certification process through the United States Department of the Treasury. And so from 2005 to 2021, in this part in Indiana, there was about 673 million of CDFI investment across the state of Indiana. Okay. So when you look at the lending industry, we're talking billions and trillions of dollars. The CDFI industry is about $250 billion of that. It's a sector of lending at about that amount. So upwards of $750 million invested in Indiana over the first 15 years, or the 2005 to 2001, during this part of the 21st century. So most of those investments are going to come to provide affordable housing, food security, daycare, energy efficiency, and small business expansion or startup. So you have folks all over the place that are trying to get affordable housing done in their community. They're an entrepreneur trying to expand their small business, or to have a startup. Food security, there are things called food deserts. If you don't know what food deserts are, it's where food is either inaccessible as far as fresh food goes, or you're within a certain distance where you're not able to access it because you're not able to drive or walk. And so in rural areas, it's a big factor. Energy efficiency is something that's kind of coming online now. So these organizations exist. There are about 1,500 of them across the country. And our job at CDFI Friendly is to connect projects in our region with these organizations around the country, right? So we were the first in the country. Mayor Hamilton, John Hamilton, our previous mayor, ran a CDFI early in his career. And so when he became mayor, he said, I think we need to start one of these in Bloomington. So he got together with the Community Foundation and other partners and started looking at whether this area could handle CDFI, meaning is the market robust enough to raise the capital and do the lending and do all that kind of stuff? Because there are about 20 organizations in Indiana that have that status as a certified CDFI. But as it turned out, the market here, we're a relatively small city, about 85,000 people. Monroe County is somewhere around 120, 130,000, I think. And so we thought, what's a different way to do this? If we're not going to stand up a CDFI, a separate organization that lends money and does what all the other CDFIs do, what can we do to make sure we get more project investment here in this part of the state? So he worked with folks that he had worked with in the industry and stood up what is called a friendly organization. So we were the first in the country to do this. There are now 5. Shortly after we started, there was one started in South Bend, one started in Evansville earlier this year, and there's one in Fort Worth, Texas, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. So the idea is to get friendly organizations going where the CDFI industry is not helping fill those financial gaps. So we're not a direct lending organization. We don't do direct loans ourselves. We work with the CDFIs to do that. Our job is to connect projects with these 1,500 organizations around the country to do that. But we've got about $4 million in a lending pool that we can work with partners, the project partner and the CDFI partner, to help be a participant in that project. And I'll give you an example here of what that looks like. So if you're not familiar with Bloomington Cooperative Living, it's an organization here in Bloomington and Monroe County that is a housing co-op. So it is resident managed. The house, the structures, the facilities are set up really a single room occupancy with a shared kitchen, shared living space, and the rent is affordable. It's geared toward people who are making 80% or less of the area median income. So housing co-ops are something that are sort of a grassroots level affordable housing model that are starting to expand around the country. And we would like to see more of them in Indiana because it is a way for flexible, affordable housing to be stood up. So Bloomington Cooperative Living has done quite a bit. They have 5 properties in Bloomington, and in 2020, they came to us and approached the city of Bloomington and CDFI Friendly for some help in getting structure on West 9th Street renovated and reinvigorated to be affordable housing. So it is now 21 units of affordable housing. And the way this is structured, so this CDFI, it's called Local Enterprise Assistance Fund out of Boston. Their job is to help cooperatives, so food co-ops, housing co-ops, and they do this all over the country. They engaged and provided about half of the financing, $424,000 at a 5, the formatting got a little messed up there, but $424,000 at 5.5% interest rate. Okay, so that was their part of the deal. Then our organization, because we had a CDFI engaged, we came and basically did the other half of the project at 3%. So overall, it made the project more affordable that we were able to lend our money at 3%. And that is our policy. So it's meant to be a financial enhancement to make the project more affordable, to make the overall project more affordable, because those interest rates fluctuate. Right now, I think they were around 6 or 7 yesterday, depending on what you're looking at. And a lot of times the CDFIs will lend at kind of a prime interest rate, but we always lend our money at 3%. So the idea is to blend that rate together and make the overall project more affordable for nonprofits and others trying to get community development projects done. So that's how this works. We engaged the CDFI, we connected. I think Bloomington Cooperative Living knew of LEAF, so we worked with them and facilitated that project. 4 years ago, we did another one with them last year on West Kirkwood, where they renovated an old insurance building at 410 West Kirkwood. And we are about to do another project with them as well, which I'd be glad to share details with you when that's closed. But things are moving with cooperative living and affordable housing. This is a way for smaller scale affordability to be present in a community. So here we go. So we started this in Bloomington. And then when the Community Foundation was engaged, many of you know, our board president is Tina Peterson. She's also the president of the Community Foundation. So if you know Tina, she helps run a family of organizations, CDFI Friendly Bloomington, the foundation, and regional partners like Regional Opportunity Initiatives that work to advance community and economic development in Bloomington and Monroe County, as well as the Indiana Uplands. So the Indiana Uplands are 11 counties, sort of south and southwest of here. Goes down to Jasper and DuBois County and over to Crawford and over to Washington County as well. And so we started in Bloomington, Monroe County, and then a few years ago, we expanded into the rest of the region, the Indiana Uplands region. So we now cover 13 counties. 2 counties extra are Morgan and Jackson counties that we added on because they are part of kind of that metropolitan market area. And so from those years that I told you earlier, from 2005 to 2020, when there was just $10 million invested from CDFIs in this region, right? So that's about 1.5% of the overall investment from Indiana at that time. We're about 7% of the population. So that's just a small reference to the proportionality of the investment. And most of these are loans, but it's still community development investment. So when you're looking at how a community advances with all the partners engaged with Regional Opportunities Initiative, everything going on at Crane, Indiana University, IU Health, all the things going on to advance community development, this sector of community development investment was really lacking, right? And so that's a reason why this organization was stood up. And so there were 3 counties in our region that had seen no investment from a CDFI ever, right? So Greene, Owen, and Martin counties, pretty rural, pretty small counties, but still a lot of need there. So when we're talking about what the need is for this, when you're sitting there thinking about how's the project going to get done, this is again that a tool in the toolbox that we can help out. So that's our mission: bring more investment to this area of the state. These 13 counties that include Bloomington and Monroe County. Since we started, Was made our first investments in 2020. We've brought about $25 million in investment to the region from CDFIs with a total project cost of about $55 million. That includes, when I went back to that example earlier with Bloomington Cooperative Living, you see the CDFI investment, the overall project investment from another source, whether it's public grants, other things that might help, because these are loans that are made from the community development financial institution. So it's resulted in the creation or retention of more than 350 units of affordable housing, as well as supporting 16 jobs and entrepreneurs. So helping those small businesses expand, helping people understand who may not have had access to traditional financing, understand that there is financing out there that can be available. And when you look at that partnership and connecting those dots, we work with banks. So banks are a partner here. And when I said at the beginning that, where traditional financing may stop, there are standards for underwriting. If you're going to apply for a loan from a bank, there are certain standards that they need to adhere. Whoops, sorry guys, that they need to adhere to. And the CDFI industry, I'm not sure what I've done. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. So we have, give me just a second here. Well, there we go. So the idea is to help people who didn't understand previously they might have access to financing. So the credit score may not be where it needs to be. They may be an immigrant family who may not have a social security number. They may have just had not the opportunity to have a generational wealth in their family where they would own property where they would lack collateral. So this is how these organizations started during the civil rights era. When we had rampant discrimination across the country. Not saying we don't anymore, but when there was discrimination, redlining for housing, all kinds of things happening that were prohibiting people from obtaining home ownership, from starting a small business. That's how these organizations started, and it's continued to evolve into community economic development organizations to continue to help people out there who may not understand or know that there's financing there. So banks can refer people to us. So banks will help. It's in their interest to help develop customers and to cultivate a customer that may not be ready for lending right now, but may need to go out and talk to a CDFI and get lending there and then come back once they've shown some financial success there and once their business is off the ground or they've owned a home for a while or whatever. So this is about filling that gap in a community, whether it be for an individual or for an organization or for the idea to develop affordable housing, a daycare center. What does that need in the community, and how can a CDFI and its partners help fill that financial gap through affordable and flexible financing? So like I said, regions like ours, traditionally rural areas that aren't densely populated outside of Bloomington, we've got pretty sparse population, pretty rural. So they've kind of seen historic underinvestment from CDFIs. A lot of CDFIs serve more urban areas. And so we've seen this historic underinvestment, which bears out in those numbers I showed you earlier from 2005 to 2021. And so if you know of a project, an organization, a person, or a business who's not been able to access financing, or who just doesn't know anything about how to develop a business or how to even look at what financing is, have them contact me, have them contact our organization. We have a pretty good referral network. We work with the Small Business Development Center. We work with banks. So Old National Bank, German American Bank, First Financial Bank are some of our financial partners. And as I mentioned, the city of Bloomington has given us money for lending and for operations to help the organization advance that cause here in Bloomington and Monroe County. So there's lots of need out there, as I think we all know. But if you're sitting there, I've left some people meetings. You go meet with an elected official or a mayor or whoever in a community, and you say, when you're sitting there figuring out how am I going to get this project done, I say, keep us on the list of possible financial resources that you can go to and say, okay, I've got a grant here, but I'm going to have to take out a loan here, or I'm going to have to, I don't know what is going on with this. Sorry. I think I keep hitting the keyboard, guys. But figuring out how to get that, what's called the financial stack. So what is that stack of financing? How many grants? How many loans? Is it a tax credit project? What are all the things happening to help get that project done? And it takes a long time, right? It can take quite a while. If you work through, I worked in city government most recently, and it can take a while for approvals and development. And are you going to get this grant? And if you get that grant, what do you have to do to comply with it? And do you have all your ducks in a row, basically? So we can help put ducks in a row. We can help you lay out that timing. The folks who work at the financial institutions will look at pro forma and they'll say, here's your project budget. Here are all the things you need. Does it work? How can we help get you there? So again, our job is to help connect those dots and to get people from a point of not being able to access financing or understanding what those options are to having lots of options on the table to get their project done. So while it doesn't roll easily off the tongue as far as titles of organizations go, it's certainly the cause is there, and it's a cause everybody understands to help get community development projects done. That's the need. You all go out, you're civic leaders, and you go around Bloomington or you go around the region or your hometown, and you see, boy, I wish we could do something with that. And I've seen a lot of that over the last 5 months since I've been in this job. I toured abandoned buildings and talked to small business owners who have an idea and they want to see it come to fruition. So again, it can take a while, but the idea there, the goal is to help advance community economic development in our 13 county region here. And so if you know somebody, have them get a hold of us. We want to see that project go. Local governments are also partners. So I work with the city of Bloomington all the time. I work with other towns and cities across the region and nonprofits who just want to see their stuff get done to serve need, because there's a need for affordable housing. We all know that. We need 16,000 units of housing in this region over the next 10 years. I talked to somebody last week in another county and there were 500 kids on the daycare waiting list. We have active food deserts in this region where people can't drive, they can't walk a safe distance to a grocery store or where to get food if it's not provided by a food bank. We have lots of energy efficiency stuff coming down the pike, which again, I can talk about that. And small business owners, those are the ones who sometimes are the hardest to find and who may not know. The mill is a great resource. I've talked to several people at the mill, but if you know somebody who wants to start a business or has questions about how to get financing for their business, I'd love to talk to them because there are a lot of ways businesses can connect with other parts of the community that they may not know about. So we'd love to help them. So glad to take questions. Thank you. So a couple hands shoot up there. Tracy and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but and then Lynn. Yeah.
Once a co-op is up and running, does it become sustainable or self-sufficient?
Yes. Yeah. So the way Bloomington Cooperative Living operates is the rents are based on what it takes to operate the facility. So they are self-sufficient, and their loans are, the loan financing for those, I think we did a 7-year term on the very first one. So they're on the other side of the curve with that loan. So it's going well. It's a good model. Bloomington Cooperative Living is a really interesting organization, volunteer run, volunteer led. They've got a lot of really smart, engaged people who understand this type of housing model. They're trying to get, like I mentioned earlier, trying to get it stood up around the state and other parts. I went to a grassroots housing conference in March where there are a lot of organizations there trying to figure out how to do cooperative housing. Because in a place like Bloomington, you've got students, you've got maybe a single parent, maybe a senior who needs affordable housing. So it's a great way to incorporate a lot of different members of the community into affordable housing. Thanks for the question. Tracy.
Yeah, so a couple of questions on the, and you may have said it and I just missed it. The co-op housing, the 9th Street location specifically, are they buying or renting? First question.
They're renting.
So they're renting. And what are the rates that they're renting at? And is it successful? And if it's not, why not? And if it is, what's making it successful?
Yeah, I think so. The rents, I'd have to check the rents at the first project, Tracy, but they're around $600 a month. And so they do shared kitchen, shared living space. I think most of the time the model is that they take turns sort of with food purchase and things like that. So it's become a community, right? In a cooperative environment, I think it makes it successful. You've got residents who are managing it. They're accountable to themselves, also to the organization's board. But I think that you've got people who are motivated by the mission of that and see the success it can bring. So this next project we're working on, I think will be the same thing. They did 21 units on 9th Street, 11 units on West Kirkwood, and then they've got some properties they manage around town that are rentals on their own, that aren't necessarily co-ops, but are managed by BCL, Bloomington Cooperative Living. So yeah, I think it's successful.
That place on 9th Street, by the way, is in my neighborhood. It used to be such an eyesore. I thought it should be bulldozed, and it looks great now. So
Yeah, it was in a sorry state. I think Lynn had one, and is that, oh, Mr. Harvey.
Yeah, given your history recently with the city, and what involvement is your organization now working with the city to identify prospective buyers or renters for Hopewell, so that it doesn't become 400,000, 500,000 homes? I mean, Habitat does a long development with prospective homeowners. Is the city doing something similar to that in identifying prospective people to populate Hopewell?
Sure. Well, I'll, I guess, speak from previous experience and what I know now, Dr. Harvey. So the Hopewell project is, it's been a long time coming, right? And so I know Mayor Thompson has dug in and trying to figure out, the best way to move that forward while infrastructure and other things are going on. With housing there, it was projected the comprehensive plan that was done for Hopewell had it projected, I think, between 600 and 1,000 units of housing. And you've got to make the numbers work over there between what would be market rates or your traditional, buy it and sell it, rent it on the market, versus how you get that affordable housing. So I think the city's very focused on making sure that, number one, there is some level of affordability. And when I talk about affordability, I think you've got to look at what we would consider, what the federal government considers affordable housing at 80% of area median income and below, but also that middle housing with workforce housing where people may be making more than 80%, maybe to 120%. And I'm talking numbers, but it's people that make too much to get subsidized housing by the government, but don't make enough to quite afford that market rate house. And we all know people like that, right? And so I think the city's being very intentional about how they put that together at Hopewell with a limited landscape with acreage, right? And also you've got to make those numbers work. And I know the mayor and the redevelopment commission and others are really digging into that. And I have confidence based on my experience there that that's going to be a project that will see some level of affordability there. And I think that's what people want to see. But the goal is to make that a mixed use, sort of have all types of housing there. The core building, the core administration building will be very affordable housing for people making 50% of area mine below. That's going to be part of that is supportive housing. So that is the first project that's gotten funded on site there. So I know we'll see some. Thanks for the question.
Hey, so I'm curious what the average risk profile is for the various projects or organizations that Friendly Bloomington is sort of facilitating for, and sort of subsequently, what's the emphasis on affordability of financing versus access for the organization?
That's a great question, Sam. I'm not sure there is an average, or if there is, I haven't learned that yet. But kind of the idea behind CDFI financing is the understanding that there may be some more risk to take on there. Somebody that doesn't have the lending history or the collateral or the credit history, whatever it is. And so I think the CDFIs are geared toward structuring financing like that. They still do have those standards though. There's, if you're building a building or you're acquiring something, what is your debt service, the ratio of your debt service coverage and things like that. There are minimums and things like that that they want to see, right? But it does vary. I'm just working on a project now where they said, well, if we are going to make an exception to this standard, we'll need to see this in the loan structure, right? So it can be tweaked. And that's kind of where the traditional finance that may not just be as flexible by law, by regulation, right? It's not blaming banks at all. They're good partners here, but where that financing needs to fill a gap, you've got that they need to work with the lender. Also, I worked with a small business lender who got a small loan. They said, here's $25,000. If you do well with this, then come back for more. And so they can kind of work with the lender, or the borrower rather, individually. I think we had a couple of questions, Charlotte and Lynn over here too. Yeah, go ahead.
For the areas outside of Bloomington proper and the more rural areas you serve, does the USDA loan program come into play at all for helping these
can.
people, especially the direct loan program with the subsidized interest?
Yeah, it can. So we work with, the question was, is it USDA and actually Small Business Administration as well? So there are direct loan programs through USDA and SBA that can help as well. So it just depends. They're another tool in the toolbox.
Hi, John. I have two questions. First of all, a quick one. You showed a slide. You told us initially that CDFI friendly Bloomington is not a loaning institution, but then when you showed us the model of the cooperative housing, it showed the CDFI friendly investment. So
Right.
that was a little confusing. I'd like clarity on that.
Yep.
And secondly, how does a person in one of the 13 counties have any clue as to how you even exist?
How we exist. Yeah. Well, to answer the first question, so we're not a direct lender. So we couldn't have made that project happen without a CDFI partnering with us. So you've got to have the CDFI as a partner. It's called a participation loan. So we couldn't have lent, that was an $832,000 project. CDFI friendly couldn't have loaned all that money on our own, right? We had to have a CDFI come in and partner. And that's what makes us, we aren't a direct lender, which means that we don't lend our money on our own to a project. We have to do it in partnership with a CDFI. So that's the answer to your first question. So without LEAF, the Local Enterprise Initiative Fund, we wouldn't have been able to lend money to that project. But because they came in, we used their underwriting. We partnered on that underwriting and partnered on that deal. What's that? Right, at the lower interest rate. So, but we wouldn't have been able to loan at all had we not had the partnership with the CDFI. So we're able to enhance the financing from a CDFI to help them make the project on the ground more affordable. So, and then to your second question, how do people know we exist? By doing things like this. So I was at the Martin County Redevelopment Commission about a month ago. I've been to every county so far, just getting out there and letting people know we exist, and word of mouth. It's using the network of people that that I've been able to work with over the last several years, and just having people understand that there's that leave behind of, are you trying to get something done? Well, think about these ways you could finance a project, grants and loans, and we're in that loan category. So it's just letting people know that we're here.
Okay, thank you very much for
yeah,
what you
Charlotte.
told us. Excuse me, I hope you can understand me. There's a lot going on in this community, or there isn't a lot going on. Both of them. We're hearing a lot about major initiatives such as yours, and now we've got the issue of the convention center and the dual justice issue, the jail and the justice issue, huge projects, and we don't have much information about what's going on there. We don't have community discussion of it. I understand that the newspapers are less, are less than they used to be. And I think they're trying hard, but they don't keep us totally informed. I want to know how we can engage the community in understanding what's going on and making decisions and helping us understand. I can't believe that the hospital, the health project, the hospital went forward and made the decisions that they did, that were outlined in the newspaper very clearly about 3 weeks ago, that in reference to the overuse of the emergency room but the fact of the matter is they said, well, we didn't expect so many older people in the hospital. What's going on when people think like that or don't think like that? I think we have to make sure that that kind of unthinking is avoided, and that the community be brought into the discussion before the money is spent. And I want to know where you play a role in that.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. I think on those projects, with the convention center and the criminal justice complex, jail, whatever we're calling it right now, we probably won't play much of a role there, right? But because those I think are going to be so large that, you're looking at bonding, at existing streams of revenue that are coming in through taxes that I think that's probably a little bit out of our wheelhouse or our pay grade, if you will. But the question about these discussions that we have about how to get, whether your comment about whether things are, there's either a lot happening or there's nothing happening. With respect to housing, one thing that when you were asking your question that made me think about when we look at housing, in Bloomington, we see a lot of apartment buildings. Do we need that apartment building? Do we need this one? That's the question I got for 3 years and still get from folks. But where is that affordable housing? Where are those smaller developments that we can help stand up and put on the ground and say, yes, we know there's lots of units of housing for students over here, but where is there affordable housing here that maybe 10 units or 15 units or 20 units? Because over time, and if you look at Bloomington as a blueprint for that, there are lots of other counties that don't have major universities in them that need that type of housing that I will say, could go on about this all day, have no housing regulation, folks, none. Many of you know what the hand department does that I used to run. That doesn't exist. That exists in 4 other cities. There are 122 cities in the state of Indiana. 5-ish have that kind of housing program. Several counties in our region, and I'm not opining, several counties in our region have different thoughts about land use than Monroe County. How's that for a statement? And so when you go there, you say, okay, somebody's renting a house. Who inspects that house? Nobody. Who's looking at what rent they charge? Nobody. Who's looking at the lease? Nobody. Right? When you have to be intentional and you have to think, how do we get some of these things done when we have communities that are not like Bloomington, and that's just fine. I grew up in Martinsville, different. You've got to think about those different types, the innovative ways to advance community development, and affordable housing is one of those. I hear stories, right? And I hear them from credible people, so I trust them. Last week, I learned about a family renting what they tell me, a 10 by 10 room with no kitchen, paying $800 a month, somewhere in this region, in Indiana, less than an hour from where we live, right? That doesn't speak to the need of not just what I'm trying to do at CDFI friendly, but the reason why we need affordable housing, why we need some sort of view into this and say, here are folks who need housing, who may be new to this community, maybe new to this country. How do we help them stay here? How do we help them thrive? They may have come here for a job, but what are they going home to at night? And that is not, I've got 3 anecdotes running around my head right now in 3 different counties to pass along to you. And that makes a difference. It sort of, makes your hair stand up a little bit when you think about, why this kind of stuff is important. So Charlotte, I hope that answered your question in a very roundabout way.
John, thank you for the presentation. I have kind of a 10,000 foot level question. How does CDFI friendly Bloomington measure its success?
Yeah.
Are there certain gaps you want to fill in? Is there a return on investment you're looking for? Is it money out the door, money in the door? Could you comment on that?
Yeah, sort of. That's a great question, Sue, and thanks for that. Look, I think we had an original goal of trying to get $50 million of CDFI investment into the region by the end of 2024, and then COVID hit. So we're about halfway there. So that was a number that was established as a goal. But when I looked at the numbers, I just recently got those numbers I shared with you about the investment in Indiana over the first part of the century here. And we're below where I think we should be, right? $673 million across the state. We've seen 1.5% of that. So I think we could do more there. Now, since those numbers came down, those are up to 2021. You've seen more money come in for the READY program that ROI has gotten $30 million. And you see lots going on at Crane and Westgate and all this stuff happening. So there's a lot going on. That's one way to measure the impact. How much investment, how much attention, how much project investment have we seen from CDFIs to help fill those gaps, right? Grants are not going to be around forever. And even if you have a grant now, it could be a different grant down the road. So you need to think about how much does this region know about CDFIs and how much do they know about us? And my job is to help close that gap, right? So as you look at that menu of financing, you measure the impact both with, have we seen increased investment? Have we seen more units of affordable housing? Have we seen more small businesses? So you look at those areas of focus, right? Food security, I think, is going to be a really tough one. And I think the challenge to measuring our impact is the time. I mean, it takes a long time to get an affordable housing project done, whatever it is, right? Whether it's a development at Hopewell or down the street or a 10-unit affordable housing, there are just stuff happens, right? So measuring the impact has got to be steady. We'd have to figure out what those things are. And this organization has decided to measure it by investment amount and by the numbers, number of affordable units, number of jobs or entrepreneurs supported. Some of the other areas we're just kind of breaking into. That's where we are so far.
Before the last question in the room, does anybody online have a question?
I don't think there are any online questions today.
Hi, yours certainly sounds like a most worthwhile organization. This is the first I've ever heard of it. My question is two parts. How do folks find out about your services, and how do your loans provide food security? You may have answered those, but I missed it.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. How do folks find out about us? It's word of mouth. It's me getting out there. It's social media, which I admittedly need to do better at. I'm a one-person shop, but it is that word of mouth. It's one thing I've seen thus far, just being on the ground, is, you know, this person knows that person who knows this person who's trying to get a project done. This person is struggling and they may know that person. And look, I'm fortunate that I've been working in the state for a long time. And so I know a lot of people who know other people and trying to just make those connections. And so it's that networking. And it's also knowing what kind of projects may be out there, right? What kind of housing projects may be brewing around the district or the region, and figuring out how to talk to community leaders about those and how this kind of financing can help their project. There are certain types of housing projects where it can help you in a competitive process to have a diverse pool of investment, right? And so that's where CDFI could help. And the other organization, your other question, sorry, the second part, food security, that, like I said, that's going to be a tough one. Most of the time, what we would look at there is how you can, maybe, do we need to build a grocery store or a food pantry, food bank? How do we help sort of indirectly help a nonprofit? There are organizations, CDFIs, that help nonprofit organizations build facilities. There's one specifically that works in Indiana that helps nonprofits with facilities. So we have a ton of nonprofits in Bloomington. If they even need facilities, there's a CDFI that can help. So also the Center for Rural Engagement, Kyla's here. They do a lot of work in the region to help with food security and connect the agricultural community. I'll give them a nod here. And there's my umbrella. So thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank Ron for this last meeting, right?
Yes. John, I'm so proud to be a Bloomingtonian with a service that you provide. It's great. And thanks for sharing that today. And in honor of your presentation, Hoosier Hills Food Bank will make a donation in your honor. It's always good to have a Rotarian as a speaker today, and you did an outstanding job. Michael asked me to remind the program committee that you're going to have a meeting shortly after this meeting. I didn't say it'd be a short meeting. I said shortly after this meeting. Have some acknowledgements. Obviously, our greeter was Charles Pierce. Introductions, Steve Wicks. Reflection, Dave Meyer. Our reporter, Sam Udek. Zoom manager, Joy Harder. Thank you, Joy. And Michael Shermas as our camera mic operator. And obviously Tyler Martin Nichols for the work that he does. And he has Zoom back up running again. So thank you very much. The next meeting will be July 2nd in the Frangipani room. And we'll have some fun as I conclude my presidency and Tracy starts hers. So it's going to be a great year under Tracy. So with that, if you would stand and join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, would be built on better friendship. Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun?